The moment the signal dies, the world does not look different. The sky remains the same pale blue. Traffic lights still hang over empty intersections. Cell phones still glow in people's hands, searching silently for a network that is no longer there. But within minutes, an invisible system that modern civilization depends on begins to fracture. Communication networks are not simply conveniences. They are the nervous system of industrial society. When that nervous system fails suddenly and at scale, coordination collapses before most people even recognize the danger. The real threat of a communications blackout is not the silence itself. It is the chain reaction that begins the moment millions of people are cut off from information at the same time. To understand why this matters, it is necessary to analyze what communications networks actually do beneath the surface. Most people imagine communication systems as devices: phones, radios, satellites, fiber cables. In reality, those devices are only the outer layer of a much deeper structure composed of switching centers, routing algorithms, timing synchronization, power redundancy, and priority traffic management. Every second, these systems coordinate enormous volumes of data that guide transportation, emergency response, power distribution, and financial transactions. The public sees messages and calls. Infrastructure operators see timing pulses, routing tables, and control signals that stabilize entire industries. When communication pathways break, systems designed to function with continuous feedback suddenly begin operating blind. The moment the signal dies, the world does not look different. The sky remains the same pale blue. Traffic lights still hang over empty intersections. Cell phones still glow in people's hands, searching silently for a network that is no longer there. But within minutes, an invisible system that modern civilization depends on begins to fracture. Communication networks are not simply conveniences. They are the nervous system of industrial society. When that nervous system fails suddenly and at scale, coordination collapses before most people even recognize the danger. The real threat of a communications blackout is not the silence itself. It is the chain reaction that begins the moment millions of people are cut off from information at the same time. To understand why this matters, it is necessary to analyze what communications networks actually do beneath the surface. Most people imagine communication systems as devices: phones, radios, satellites, fiber cables. In reality, those devices are only the outer layer of a much deeper structure composed of switching centers, routing algorithms, timing synchronization, power redundancy, and priority traffic management. Every second, these systems coordinate enormous volumes of data that guide transportation, emergency response, power distribution, and financial transactions. The public sees messages and calls. Infrastructure operators see timing pulses, routing tables, and control signals that stabilize entire industries. When communication pathways break, systems designed to function with continuous feedback suddenly begin operating blind. Evidence of this phenomenon already exists in real-world events. During regional telecommunications outages, emergency dispatch centers have reported surges of confusion not because incidents increased, but because coordination vanished. Ambulances arrived at incorrect locations because digital mapping services could not update routes. Police departments lost access to shared databases that verify identities and criminal records. Hospitals operating electronic health systems struggled to access patient data when cloud-based platforms became unreachable. None of these failures were catastrophic individually. The danger appeared when they occurred simultaneously across multiple sectors. For survival planners and emergency management professionals, this reveals a crucial implication. The first hours of a communications blackout are dominated by uncertainty rather than immediate physical danger. People cannot determine whether the outage is local, regional, or global. Authorities cannot easily broadcast accurate information. Rumors fill the vacuum faster than verified updates. In disaster psychology research, this information vacuum is known to amplify stress responses. Humans are wired to react strongly to uncertainty because the brain treats missing information as a potential threat. When millions of individuals experience that uncertainty at once, behavior begins to shift rapidly. The escalation often begins with a simple feedback loop between perception and action. If people believe a disruption may last a long time, they begin securing resources immediately. This behavior is rational on an individual level, but when performed simultaneously by large populations it overwhelms supply chains. The sudden surge in demand becomes visible to others, reinforcing the belief that something larger is happening. Communication outages accelerate this process because they remove the primary mechanism societies use to distribute reassurance and accurate timelines. There is another hidden layer beneath this dynamic that is rarely discussed outside technical fields: timing synchronization. Many digital networks depend on precise time signals provided by satellite navigation systems. Financial trading platforms, telecommunications switching equipment, and portions of electrical grid infrastructure rely on coordinated timing pulses accurate to fractions of a second. If communication failures disrupt the distribution of these signals, systems that appear unrelated can begin malfunctioning simultaneously. The public sees scattered failures. Engineers recognize the signature of a timing cascade. Research into infrastructure resilience has repeatedly shown that communication outages act as multipliers for other crises. Power grid disturbances, cyber incidents, natural disasters, and severe weather events become significantly harder to manage when communication pathways are degraded. Emergency responders rely on constant updates to allocate resources. Without those updates, response strategies become slower and less efficient. This does not mean collapse is inevitable. It means the margin for error shrinks dramatically. Understanding this margin is essential for anyone evaluating real survival scenarios. Many preparedness discussions focus on dramatic end states, but the most dangerous phase is often the transitional period when systems are partially functioning yet coordination is failing. During this window, decisions made by individuals, institutions, and infrastructure operators determine whether the disruption stabilizes or spirals into a broader crisis. One of the first systems affected during widespread communication outages is transportation logistics. Modern supply chains rely on digital dispatching systems that track vehicle locations, optimize delivery routes, and coordinate loading schedules. Truck fleets communicate with centralized control centers that constantly adjust routes based on traffic conditions, fuel availability, and delivery priorities. When communication networks fail, this coordination disappears instantly. Drivers may still have fuel and vehicles, but they no longer have real-time instructions. Warehouses may have inventory, but they cannot easily synchronize shipments with incoming trucks. This breakdown reveals a critical misunderstanding about supply chains. Many people believe shortages occur only when resources physically run out. In reality, shortages often occur because distribution systems lose coordination. Goods can exist within the system yet remain inaccessible because the logistical pathways that connect them to consumers are disrupted. Communication is the invisible glue holding those pathways together. Studies conducted after major disasters demonstrate how quickly this effect appears. When digital logistics systems are interrupted, warehouses experience backlog congestion within hours. Trucks arrive at facilities that cannot process them due to missing scheduling data. Inventory systems freeze because they cannot sync with central databases. Each delay creates additional congestion further down the chain. The result resembles a traffic jam spreading through an entire economic network. From a survival perspective, the implication is clear but frequently overlooked. The earliest shortages during a communication blackout are rarely caused by empty warehouses. They are caused by coordination failures that prevent existing supplies from reaching their destinations. Food distribution, fuel deliveries, and medical shipments all depend on precise timing and communication. When that coordination disappears, local availability becomes unpredictable even if regional supply remains sufficient. The escalation of this problem becomes visible in urban environments first. Cities operate on tightly scheduled delivery cycles because storage space is limited and demand is high. Grocery stores often receive shipments daily rather than maintaining large reserves. Fuel stations rely on automated monitoring systems that request deliveries when tank levels drop below specific thresholds. Without communication networks, those automated signals stop. Deliveries become delayed or misrouted. Within a day or two, consumers begin encountering empty shelves or fuel pumps that cannot process electronic payments. This transition is often misinterpreted as evidence of resource depletion, but the deeper cause is informational disruption. When people cannot determine whether supplies will be replenished, behavior shifts toward immediate acquisition. This behavior further stresses already disrupted distribution systems. Behind this visible tension lies another scientific factor: the speed of cascading uncertainty. In risk modeling, uncertainty spreads through networks faster than physical failures because it affects decision-making across every node simultaneously. When communication fails, uncertainty expands across entire populations at once. Each individual responds independently, yet their actions interact through shared infrastructure. Emergency planners attempt to counter this effect through redundant communication systems such as radio networks, satellite links, and priority access channels. However, redundancy has limits. Many backup systems depend on trained operators and limited bandwidth. They are designed to coordinate essential services rather than support the full communication load of modern society. If primary networks remain down for extended periods, the gap between available communication capacity and public demand becomes enormous. At this stage, the blackout begins transforming from a technical problem into a societal stress test. Institutions attempt to re-establish control using alternative channels. Local authorities deploy emergency broadcast systems. Amateur radio operators relay messages between communities. Some cellular networks may restore limited service using portable infrastructure or satellite backhaul. Yet each of these solutions covers only fragments of the original network. The critical question now becomes duration. If communications return quickly, the disruption fades into a temporary inconvenience. If the outage persists, the secondary effects begin accumulating across sectors that depend on synchronized information flow. Financial markets delay transactions. Fuel distribution schedules drift further out of alignment. Emergency services stretch their limited coordination capacity. The silence itself becomes a strategic variable. In the absence of reliable information, individuals must interpret incomplete signals from their surroundings. A long line at a fuel station, a store that closes early, a police vehicle patrolling an unusually quiet street. Each observation becomes a data point in a rapidly evolving situation. What makes this phase particularly dangerous is that the underlying infrastructure may still be partially intact. Electricity may still flow. Water systems may still operate. Transportation networks may still exist. But without communication, the systems that manage these resources begin operating on delayed or degraded information. The longer the blackout persists, the more these delays accumulate. Control centers lose visibility into remote infrastructure. Maintenance crews cannot easily report system status. Dispatchers rely on outdated data when allocating resources. In engineering terms, the system begins drifting away from equilibrium because corrective feedback loops are broken. This drift does not occur instantly, but its consequences compound over time. Each hour without reliable communication reduces the system's ability to detect and correct emerging problems. Minor issues that would normally be resolved quickly begin lingering unresolved. And this is where the next stage of the crisis begins to unfold, not through dramatic explosions or sudden collapse, but through the quiet accumulation of small failures that no longer have a clear path for coordination or repair.